Hello friends, welcome to Misty Moon Designs. In my channel we do unboxings, we do reviews, and we also do tutorials. And today we're going to do a tutorial. We're going to be working with Didi's Deluxe bead box for the month of March. Now if you're not familiar with that box, I'll leave some information down below in the description section of this video, along with a link to the website. And boy, we're going to have so much fun today. We're going to be making 3 necklaces, a bracelet, and a pair of earrings. So if that's something you're interested in, you're in the right place. I'm going to show you how to take advantage of all the beautiful beads that come in Didi's Deluxe bead boxes. I'll show you step by step from beginning to end. I'll give you a few tips to help you get started in the design process. And then we'll dive into making the jewelry, and I'll show you some techniques that hopefully you'll find helpful. As you can see, we're going to be making lots of pieces today, and this jewelry features beads that are very colorful and cheerful. We're going to be working with sea sediment jasper, tiger eye beads, jade beads, check beads, and crystal beads. And of course, it's very floral and spring themed, perfect for this time of the year. Now, if you haven't seen the unboxing for this collection of beads, I'll leave a link to that video down below as well. And I can't wait to show you how to make all this jewelry, so let's go ahead and get started. Here we have the beads that came in the Didi's Deluxe bead box for the month of March 2025. Now if you haven't seen the unboxing video, I'll leave a link down below so you can go check it out. But I wanted to give you a quick glimpse of everything that came in that box. I'm not going to go over the sizes or anything with you today, but what I do want to do is go over the design process a little bit. Of course, I'm risking the chance of getting a bad comment, because the other day I did get a comment saying that I talk too much, believe it or not. In any case, I'm here for you, and I'm here to help you as much as I can with the design process as well as making jewelry. So if you don't want to hear me talk, then I recommend that you fast forward or just click on the timestamps down below. But anyway, a lot goes into designing, guys, to be quite honest. Sometimes I just sit down and look at the beads like this, and then eventually something will come to mind. But the first thing you need to do is to come up with some kind of vision or purpose. For example, you need to decide whether you want to make a bracelet, a necklace, or earrings. And then you need to decide whether the piece will be casual, formal, or if you want something boho or nature themed. Of course, with all these flowers, how can you not do something that's nature themed? So I would say this is probably the first step, is to lay everything out like this. So you can look at the colors, the sizes, and the textures. And then the next step would be to identify focal beads. And Didi's Deluxe bead boxes make it really easy because they always give you a designer strand, which is basically all focal beads. And when I first saw that strand, I knew right away that I was going to make a bracelet. It just automatically popped into my mind. But anyway, after you identify the focal beads, then you have to identify what I call the filler beads, which is basically everything else but the focals. Now, normally in the design process of jewelry, you would have to establish colors, but since this is a curated collection, that part's already done for you, which makes it super easy. Another thing you have to take into account is whether or not your piece will be symmetrical or asymmetrical. And I've already decided in my mind that I'm going to make something asymmetrical. But even though your piece may be asymmetrical, you still have to consider the balance, the weight. And when I say weight, I mean that a part of the bracelet or the necklace is going to be heavier than another part, but still balanced, if that makes any sense. And you can make it balanced through color and shape repetition. It's actually a little bit difficult for me to describe that, because basically I just start arranging my beads until I come up with something that looks good. And of course, you always have to consider whether your design is too heavy or visually distracting. In other words, you don't want a part of the bracelet to be too heavy with these big focal beads. So for example, if I'm using the beads on this strand here, I'm going to want some smaller beads on a portion of the bracelet. And as you can see, I have lots of choices. I actually like this beautiful jade strand with the designer strand. But I also love the magenta beads because they pick up some of the washes on those beads. As you can see, this one has a violet or a purplish wash, and this one has a similar wash as well. So there's a lot of considerations, but it really doesn't have to be that difficult. Like I said, you can just sit down and play with the beads until you come up with something that looks good or something that appeals to you. But anyway, as you can see, guys, the box was filled with some really gorgeous beads this month. And I love these colors. I love the periwinkles and the purples and the soft greens. And the beads are relatively on the smaller side this month, except of course the focal beads. So anyway, if you're not familiar with Didi's Deluxe bead box, I'll leave a link to the website down below so you can go check it out, as well as a coupon code in case you're interested. And by the way, this is not a subscription box. It's a limited edition box, which means that once they sell out, that's it. And they do sell out quickly. So anyway, let me pick the beads and the materials that we're going to need for this bracelet. And then we'll work on the necklaces and earrings later on. So I'll see you in a few moments. Here are the materials for the bracelet. As you can see, I have the focal beads, but I also have these little ones. The focal beads are going to be on one side of the bracelet, and the little ones are going to be on the other side. And I'm actually going to have 2 strands of the little ones to balance it out. Like I mentioned before, you want it to be balanced. You don't want the bracelet to be too heavy on one side and not heavy enough on the other. I'm going to use this ring to connect them, and it's a closed ring. It's not a jump ring. It did not come in the box. It's from my own collection. Now these 2 beads are going to be for some dangles that I'm going to create. As you can see, I have a lobster clasp, an extended chain, and 2 ball head pins. These findings are from my own collection as well. They did not come in the box. So let me go over the sizes of these beads with you. The large flower bead measures 17 millimeters across. The leaf bead measures 13 by 15 millimeters. The smaller flower bead measures 13 millimeters across. The triangle bead measures 10 millimeters across. And the magenta colored bead is a tiger eye bead, and it measures 6 millimeters across. Now the bottom ones are all jade beads, and they're in a matte finish, and they measure 4 millimeters across. And I'll go over the sizes of the ones we're going to use for the dangles later on. Now one thing I do want to talk about is the functionality of your piece. Whether you're making a bracelet or a necklace, you want to make sure that it's functional. In other words, you want to make sure that the components lay flat. And so one of the things that I do is that I test my pieces. I always try to make a prototype ahead of time. Not so much if I'm doing it on my own, but if I'm doing it for a tutorial, I always do try to make a prototype. And for that, I use very soft wire. I actually use aluminum wire because it's easy to assemble and disassemble a piece. Plus it saves my cutters. And that's one of my secrets, guys. What can I say? I never want to show you how to make a piece that doesn't lay properly or is not functional. That's one of my rules. But anyway, to link all of these beads together, I'm going to use some 22 gauge wire. I'm going to use this one right here, and it's in a gold color, as you can see. And because we're using 22 gauge wire, I'm going to do some wrap loops today. I have a 3-inch piece here. You need an extra long piece when you're doing wrap loops, as you know. I'm going to grab it about, I would say, a third of the way down, something like that. Maybe a little bit less. Bend it. Switch to this part of the pliers and the wire as well. Wrap the tail around the barrel of my pliers. Flip my pliers around and continue to wrap to the back. Just like that. Let me flatten my loop a little bit. And actually let me open it because I'm going to slide this ring into it. Let me open it a little bit more. I guess the ring is a little bit thicker than I thought. There we go. I'm going to grab the loop with these pliers. These are actually crimping pliers, but I like to use them because they have skinny tips, plus they grab really well. And now I'm going to create some wraps. So I'm going to grab this tail and wrap it around a couple of times. Cut off the excess using flush cutters. And now let me tuck this tail in. Slide the bead onto it. Like this. Grab the wire at the top of the bead like this. Bend it. Switch to this part. Wrap the tail around the nose. Flip my pliers around. Continue to wrap to the back. Grab the loop, grab the tail, and do a couple of wraps. Let me line up my loops. Using my flush cutters, I'm going to snip off the excess. And once again, you need to tuck in that tail. Let me straighten this loop a little bit. So this is what we have so far. It's pretty simple. Let me show you one more time. I have another piece of wire. I'm going to grab it a third of the way down, bend it, grab it with my round nose pliers, wrap the tail around the nose, flip the pliers around, continue to wrap to the back. I'm going to open up this loop, slide this component into it, like that. Grab the loop, grab the tail, and do a couple of wraps. Cut off the excess. Tuck that little end in. Slide the next bead on. Grab the wire with the round nose pliers, bend it, wrap the tail around the nose, flip the pliers around, and continue to wrap to the back. Grab the loop, grab the tail, and do a couple of wraps. Cut off the excess. And tuck that tail in. Let me line up my loops. And now we have 2 beads connected. It's pretty simple, guys, but it does take practice. So if you're new, please don't get frustrated. Just keep trying. Practice makes perfect. I remember when I first started doing wrap loops, it was pretty challenging, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. So let me go ahead and finish these 3. Like I said, these 2 are for the dangles. Now I may not end up using this one. It all depends on how long this piece will be after I get everything connected. When I did my prototype, I did simple loops, which don't require as much space in between, but we'll see once I have everything connected, I'll measure it. So let me go ahead and finish these 3 off camera. These are going to be for the dangles. We'll do those later on. And after I get these done, I'll come back and I'll show you how to connect these bottom ones. So I'll see you in a few moments. As you can see, I've connected the focal beads and I made a little design change. I decided not to use the magenta bead because this piece is actually long enough. It measures about 3 inches. So I'm going to use this magenta colored tiger eye bead as well as the bellflower bead as dangles. My wrist is kind of small, so I want my bracelet to measure about 6.5 inches, something like that. But of course, if you want something longer, you'd want to add another bead there. And as you can see, I left this loop open. The reason is I'm going to connect the extended chain to it, so I don't want to close it just yet. But now I'm going to build the left side of the bracelet, and I'm going to use these beads down here. And it's the same process, guys. It's not anything different. But I know some of you are new, and so I want to walk you through it. So once again, I have a piece of wire here. Of course, this one's shorter than what I used on those because I'm going to use it on these small beads. So I'm grabbing it pretty much near the center. I'm going to bend it. Switch to this part. Wrap the tail around the nose. Flip the pliers around and continue to wrap that tail to the back. I'm going to open it up and slide the ring into the loop like this. Grab that loop, grab the tail, and do a couple of wraps. Cut off the excess. Tuck in that little end. Slide a small bead onto my wire, like that. Grab the wire with my round nose pliers, bend it, switch to this part, wrap the tail around the nose, flip my pliers around and continue to wrap to the back. Grab the loop, grab the tail, and do a couple of wraps. Now this tail is pretty short. I probably should have used a longer piece of wire, but I can still do it. Let me line up my loops since I'm here. Snip off the excess and tuck in that little tail. And that's basically it. I'm going to keep connecting beads until I get about 6 1/4 inches worth from this end to the other end, or maybe 6 1/2. But instead of one strand, I'm actually going to have 2. So after I get done connecting beads, I'm going to go ahead and connect the second strand. It's very, very simple. And one thing I forgot to bring out is a 5mm jump ring. I'm going to need it to connect the 2 strands at this end along with a lobster clasp. So anyway, let me go ahead and build the 2 strands off camera, and then we'll come back and attach the dangles, the extended chain, and the lobster clasp. So I'll see you in a few moments. Okay, I'm back. And as you can see, I built my 2 strands of the 4mm size beads. Now from the flower bead to the triangle bead, it measures 3 1/4 inches. But these 2 strands measure a little under 3 1/4 inches in length. But that's okay because I'm going to add the jump ring at the end. So by the time I do that, it'll be 3 1/4 inches. Another thing I want to talk about is the orientation of these loops. That's kind of important. Obviously, you want the ring to sit flat on your wrist. And if that's the case, then these loops have to be vertical. Same thing with these at the end. And they're actually not vertical, they're horizontal. Whenever you connect anything, you should look at that. So let me verify. Vertical, horizontal, vertical, horizontal, vertical, horizontal. So that means I have to change the orientation of these 2 loops at the end so that they're vertical, because you want them to connect to this jump ring properly. It's just a little detail that makes a big difference, guys. In actuality, these aren't as important as this one. You definitely want this one sitting flat on your wrist. You don't want it vertical. But I always try to stick to good practices, and I try not to cut corners. So to change the orientation is very easy. I know most of you already know how to do this, but the new people probably don't. I'm just going to grab this loop with these pliers, and then with the second set, I'm going to grab the other loop and turn them this way so they're perpendicular. Same thing with this one. Let me go ahead and open up this jump ring. And I do want to make sure that I connect it properly, so I'm going to double check. I'm just looking at the orientation of all my loops. I think this is correct. Let me just connect it and then I'll double check. You can always tell by the way they sit. And I think this is correct. You don't want the beaded components to be flipping around. That's one way you can tell. And I'm pretty sure that's correct. And actually, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to attach the lobster clasp. So let me go ahead and reopen this jump ring. And close it right back up again. So my clasp is connected now. And now I'm going to connect the extended chain to this end. But before I do, I want to remove some of these links. I don't like to have so many links. I think I want to have a total of 3 because these links are pretty big. So let me open up this one. These are actually open links, they're not soldered. this loop a little bit. I got a link stuck to my pliers. Let me slide this last link into it, like this. Grab it with my skinny pliers, grab the tail, and do a couple of wraps. And now we just need to create the dangles, and that's very easy. I'm going to slide the tiger eye bead onto my ball head pin, grab the pin with my round nose pliers, like this, bend it, switch to this part of the pin, wrap the tail around the nose of the pliers, flip the pliers around, continue to wrap to the back. I'm going to open up this loop, slide the last link of the chain into it, like this, grab the loop, grab that tail and do a couple of wraps. Snip the excess off. Tuck in the little end if you see one. So now I have one dangle attached. And now let me attach this one. So now I have my two dangles attached. Of course, you could add a much longer extended chain if you wanted to. And that's what it looks like. Isn't that adorable? I love it. It's so pretty. Let me put it on. I'm not going to do up the clasp because it's a little difficult for me, but I think you get the idea. I think it's so pretty. It really is. I will put it on properly at the end of this tutorial, so please stick around for that. But anyway, guys, isn't this a pretty spring bracelet? It really is. I love the colors. I hope you like it as well. So now we're going to move on to the necklaces, and I have some idea of what we're going to make. Let me get the materials for the first necklace. This first necklace is going to be very simple. I've already started. I'm actually going to add more dangles. Now this chain came in the box. It actually came with this beautiful pendant, which I'm going to use, but I'm going to do something a little different with this pendant. It was very easy to remove the chain. I simply slid it out through the bail that came attached. But anyway, as you can see, I've already hung 3 dangles, and the spacing between them is a little bit less than ½ an inch. You're going to have to decide the spacing for yourself. And by the way, this chain measures 17 inches in length, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to do something different with it. I want the pendant to hang a little lower, so I'm going to build some beaded components to create a strand, and then I'll hang this pendant at the bottom. So this one's going to hang up near the collarbone, so it'll be the shortest one out of the 3 necklaces that we're going to make today. Here are some more of the sediment jasper beads. I'm not sure how many I'm going to hang just yet. I'm going to have to decide. And here are some more of the tiger eye beads. Like I said before, these measure 6 millimeters in size, and these measure 13 by 4 millimeters in size, and they're sea sediment jasper cylinder tubes. And here's some more ball head pins. So for those of you who have never done this before, you start with a center dangle. So you need to find the center link, and that's very easy to do. Basically what I do is I hold the chain like this, and then I find the link that's in the middle. It's very easy. Now one thing you do need to pay attention to are the way the dangles are hung. Let me just show you what I mean by that. If you'll notice, each one of these dangles is hanging on the bottom side of the links. In other words, you don't want one hanging on this side, on the bottom side, and one hanging on the top side, because then they'll never hang properly and they'll be flipping around all the time. Let me go ahead and hang the next dangle. Let me just move this up out of the way. I'm going to slide the bead onto the ball head pin like this, grab the pin, bend it, switch to this part, wrap the tail around the nose, flip the pliers around and continue to wrap to the back, and let me open up that loop. Pick up my work, and I want to make sure that I hang the dangle on the correct side. So let's take a look. As you can see, this one's hanging on the bottom side of that link. So I'm going to go 2 links over and hang it on the 3rd link, which is this one right here. And I'm talking about the links that are horizontal to the mat. Let me grab a loop. And let's take a look. Double check to make sure that I hung it properly. I'm going to try to zoom in when I do the video editing, but as you can see, I have 2 horizontal links in between the 2 dangles. I hope that makes sense. And I'm not counting the vertical ones, I'm just counting the horizontal ones. So now I have 4 dangles attached. I'm going to hang one on this side next. And then of course a tiger eye bead. And another one of these cylinder beads. And another tiger eye bead. And I think I'll probably stop at that point. But it's up to you how many dangles you want to have. So let me go ahead and hang the rest off camera and I'll be right back. Okay, as you can see, I hung all the dangles. There's a total of 6 of the tiger eye beads and 5 of the sea sediment jasper beads. Like I said, you can hang as many as you want to, but after I hung my dangles, I went to the mirror and put the necklace on to make sure it looked right, and I'm pretty happy with it. And I know it's kind of simple, but when you're making a layered set, you definitely want a mix of something simple and something more substantial. So anyway, now we're going to move on to the second necklace, and I have some idea of what we're going to do, so let me get the beads for that. Here are the beads for this necklace. I'm going to use these 3 for the pendant. This one came in the designer strand. It's the same one that I used on the bracelet. And of course, this one's the magenta colored tiger eye bead, and this is the bellflower bead. And here I have my 4mm jade rounds, and these are elongated bicones. They measure 8 by 4mm, and the color is sapphire. I'm going to build the pendant first. I have a ball head pen, and I'm just going to slide this bellflower onto it like this. Using my round nose pliers, I'm going to grab the pin like this, bend it, switch to this part of the pliers, wrap the tail around the nose, flip the pliers around, continue to wrap to the back, so that's the bottom of the pendant. I'm going to use 22 gauge wire on these 2 beads. I have a piece of wire that measures 2 3/4 inches. I'm going to grab it right here, a little bit less than half the distance down, bend it, switch to this part, wrap the tail around the nose, flip the pliers around, continue to wrap to the back. I'm going to open up this loop, slide my bellflower into it, like this. Let me grab the loop. Slide my tiger eye bead onto it. Grab the wire with my round nose pliers. Bend it. Switch. Wrap the tail around the nose. Flip the pliers around, continue to wrap to the back. And now I have 2 beads connected. Let me straighten out this loop a little bit. That's a little bit better. And now let's work on this bead. I have another piece of wire. I'm going to grab it, about 1/3 of the way down because the bead's a little bit longer, as you can see. Bend it, switch, wrap the tail around the nose, flip the plies around, continue to wrap to the back. I'm going to open up the loop, slide this dangle into it, grab the loop, slide my bead onto my wire like this, grab the wire with my round nose pliers, bend it, switch, wrap the tail around the nose, flip the plies around, continue to wrap to the back. I'm going to open up the loop and I'm going to insert one of my closed rings. I believe it measures 6 millimeters across. Let me see if I can get it in there. It's a little bit thick. Let me open it up a little bit more. There we go. Now you could use a jump ring if you wanted to, if you don't have these rings. Let me grab this loop. A jump ring would work just as well. And now let me create my wraps. Cut off the excess. Tuck in the little end. And this is what we have so far. It's going to end up being like a Y-style necklace or a drop necklace. And I'm going to attach the strands to the ring. Now the strands are going to be pretty simple. They're going to be made primarily with these blue beads, but I'm going to use these as accents. Let me just show you. Something like that. And I'm going to do the same sequence all the way up to the clasp. And I'm thinking this necklace should be about 20 inches long, but that could change. That's the nice thing about making your own jewelry. You can make changes along the way if you need to. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and attach these beads just like I attached these using wrap loops the same exact way. So to save time, I'm going to do it off camera and then I'll come back and attach the clasp. So I'll see you in a few moments. Okay, I'm back and I've connected all my beads, as you can see. I did make it a little bit longer than I thought it was going to be initially. What I did is I put the first necklace on, the one with the dangles, and then I held these strands up against my chest to see if they were long enough. That's the best way to figure out how long you want each necklace. Of course, it all depends on personal taste as well. But anyway, as you can see, I started with my 3 elongated bicones. Then I had the 2 jades, the 1 tiger eye, 2 jades, and then another set of the 3 bicones. And then I repeated the same pattern of the jade and the tiger eye, and I ended the necklace with 6 sets of the bicones. I could have ended with the jade and tiger eye combination there, but I chose not to. Sometimes I like something plainer in the back where the clasp is going to go, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. You can certainly have that configuration if you want to. And as you can see, the ones down here are open. I have not closed them with wraps yet, and that's because I'm going to attach them to the pendant. As you know, that ring is a closed ring. It's not a jump ring. And guys, the same rule applies with this. As far as the loops, you want to make sure that this beaded component has loops that are vertical so that they can connect to that ring. But you also want to make sure that these are vertical as well, because I'm going to add some jump rings there. I hope that makes sense. You don't want the jump rings to sit vertically up against your neck. And so the way I figure it out is just to simply look at each one of the loops of each component. So we have vertical, horizontal, 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 vertical, horizontal. So that means I need to change the orientation of this one here, this last loop, or this first one. And I think I'm going to go ahead and change that one there. But I'm going to do it after I get done connecting the pendant. So let me do that now. I'm going to open up this loop. Slide my pendant into it. like that. Grab the loop, grab the tail, and do a couple of wraps. By the way, these crystals are pretty fragile, and I actually cracked a couple of them, so you want to be careful when you're building these beaded components. Now let me do this one. So now my pendant's attached. And now I'm going to change the orientation of these loops. I'm going to grab this one and this one and switch them so that they're perpendicular. Same thing with this one. So now we just need to attach a clasp. Use a lobster clasp. I have two 5mm jump rings. Let me open one up. Slide my clasp into it. Slide this component into it as well. Close it up. And now let me open up this one. I know this part's very easy and most people know how to do this, but I also know we have some new viewers. So I'm doing this mostly for the new viewers. Now you could add an extended chain if you wanted to. If you wanted the option of wearing it longer or shorter, it's up to you. It should look really nice with the other necklace. And of course, we're going to be making a third necklace, and I have plenty of leftover beads for that. I'm going to be using this pendant along with some of these beads. As you can see, there is still quite a few. I'll be making some beaded components just like I did with this one. The same exact process. Of course, the configuration will be different and the beads might be different because I want to use some of the Hishi beads that came in the box. And I think what I'll do is remove this bail and maybe use some jump rings instead, or maybe hang everything off that loop since it's rather large. I'm not sure yet. I'm still thinking about it. But anyway, let me go ahead and work on that, and I'll come back and show you what I did, and then we'll work on the earrings. So I'll see you in a few moments. Okay, as you can see, I've already built my beaded components and I've connected them. This necklace is going to be super long. It took me a while to figure out this pattern, but after some trial and error, these are the beads that I settled on. Now, ideally, I wouldn't add the magenta colored beads, but I did it for this necklace because I wanted it to coordinate with the other two necklaces. Same thing with the periwinkle beads. I'm actually using them on some earrings that I'm going to be making in a few moments. And as you can see, I have a pin inserted through these two loops because I checked all of the loops already on the whole necklace, and that's the way I'm going to connect the jump ring. Like I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that each one of these loops are vertical or perpendicular to your mat because they're going to connect to a jump ring. I hope that makes sense. I know if you're new, you may not understand that concept, but in order for things to lay properly, like I keep saying, you have to make sure your loops are oriented properly. The other thing that I try to do is to make a repetitive pattern that starts and ends with the same kind of bead, but is also symmetrical on both sides of the necklace. And the way I achieve that is by repeating the Hishi beads and the jasper beads more often than these two. If you want symmetry and you're doing one long strand like this without a clasp, you want to make sure you have an even number of the beads that are accent beads. And in my case, my accent beads are actually the periwinkle beads, the tiger eye beads, and the jasper beads too, but I repeated these more often. So these are actually part of the filler beads along with the Hishi beads. I know it's a little confusing, but if I hadn't added more of the jasper beads and I had just done periwinkle, jasper, tiger eye, periwinkle, jasper, tiger eye, by the time I got to the other end of the necklace, the pattern would definitely not look symmetrical. So that's why I decided to repeat the jasper beads more often. So the pattern is periwinkle, Hishi, jasper, Hishi, tiger eye, Hishi, jasper, Hishi. And then I repeated the same pattern until I got to the other end. But of course I ended with periwinkle to match this end. So essentially the middle of the necklace is actually these two tiger eye beads. Like I said, it's a little difficult to understand unless you're doing it. But but give it a try and you'll see what I'm talking about. So anyway, this necklace is super long. It's 31 inches long, which means I don't need a clasp. It fits over the head just fine. I've already checked my loops, and that's how I'm going to attach the jump ring. I have a 6.5mm jump ring. Let me open it up. Let me slide the pin out, and I'm going to attach this one first. And now the pendant. And now this component. Close up my jump ring. So there's my necklace. I think it's so pretty, it really is. I love all these beads. I love the colors. It's so long I'm not going to be able to arrange the whole thing properly on my mat, but I think you get the idea. But anyway, guys, I do want to model it for you at the end of this video, so please stick around for that. I'm going to put it on along with the other two necklaces so you can see how they coordinate. But before we do that, we're going to make a quick pair of earrings. So let me get the materials for that. Here are the materials for the earrings. As you can see, I've already built one. Let me show you. It has periwinkle beads and bellflower beads at the top. I created some little dangles, and then I hung a tiger eye bead and a jade bead down below, and I also have a jade bead at the top there. It's a very pretty earring. As you can see, I've already created the dangles for the top part of the earring. I have 3 bellflower beads and 3 of the periwinkle colored beads. And it's the same procedure, guys, as far as the dangles. I'm going to do the same steps that I did for the first necklace with the dangles, but I'll go ahead and show you by creating a dangle with this one here. For those of you who are new, I'm going to slide the bead on like that. Grab the pin with my round nose pliers, bend it, switch to this part, wrap the tail around the nose, flip the pliers around and continue to wrap to the back. So now I have a loop. I'm going to grab the loop with these pliers, grab the tail, and do a couple of wraps. Cut off the excess. Tuck in the little end, as always. So there's my dangle. For this one, I'm going to use a piece of 22 gauge wire. I'm going to grab the wire a little bit more than 1/3 of the way down, bend it, I'm going to open up this loop, my little jade dangle went walkabouts. I don't know how that happened. It was on my lap somehow. So anyway, as you can see, I've inserted it into my loop. I'm going to grab the loop. So now these two beads are connected. And now let's work on this bead. This piece measures about 3 inches long. It's the same 22 gauge wire. I'm going to grab it at about 1/3 of the way down, bend it, I'm going to start by sliding on this jade bead, and now my dangles. Let's do a periwinkle, a bellflower, a periwinkle, another bellflower, periwinkle, and bellflower, I'm going to move them around to distribute them evenly the best way that I can. They're going to move around anyway. As you can see, they're kind of even. They're kind of alternating. But like I said, they're going to shift around anyways. And now this green bead. So that's what we have. I'm going to grab my wire right above the green bead, like this. Make sure everything's snug. Bend it. Switch to this part of the pliers. Wrap the tail around the nose. Flip the pliers around. Continue to wrap to the back. And let me go ahead and open up this loop. Insert my dangles into the loop. Let me just open it a little bit more. And it's fighting me a little bit. I'm not sure why. There we go. Check on my dangles again. Grab the loop. Like this. Grab the tail and do my wraps. Line up my loops. Snip off the excess. Tuck in that little tail. Isn't that adorable? I love it. So now I just need to attach the ear wire hook. I'm simply going to open up this loop like this, slide this loop into it, and close it up. So here's my beautiful pair of earrings to match the necklace set. I think they're super adorable and perfect for spring. So now I'd like to go ahead and arrange everything on my table so you can see the entire collection. And then I'll model each piece for you. So I'll see you in a few moments. So here's the entire collection. And it was really difficult to fit everything within the frame, but I think you get the idea. We have 3 necklaces, a pair of earrings, this beautiful bracelet. It's amazing what you can do with one box. And there's still plenty of beads left over. Let me show you. As you can see, I still have quite a few of these beads. I have Hishi beads, I have these periwinkle beads, I have the long bicones. These are the leftover from the designer strand. And here's some leftover gemstone beads. I did not use these or these, but I'm sure I'll find something to do with them. And of course there are tons of beads here. Let me just pan upward. There's the top. It's a hot mess up there, but like I said, it was difficult to arrange everything. Let me move it back down. So anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. I hope I've given you some ideas. Perhaps you might want to make just 1 or 2 of the necklaces, or all 3. And of course the bracelet and earrings are absolutely adorable. So hopefully you'll be inspired to make them as well. Don't forget that I'm going to model everything for you in just a few moments. So please stick around for that. Thank you so much for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing you again. Have a great day and I'll see you next time. Bye.